In a country of roughly 50,000 people, far removed from any conflict, almost entirely covered in ice, even there, anti-Trump protests erupted. Across Europe, people took to the streets. Today, we're breaking down the biggest crisis in NATO's history in the simplest, most straightforward way possible. Let's start with the current events. As the stakes keep rising, the military option has become a very real possibility. European states wanted to take precautions and sent symbolic numbers of personnel. France sent 15, Germany sent 13, and the UK sent just 1 soldier. Of course, this handful of troops wasn't meant to defend Greenland. It was a message. Trump got the message loud and clear and announced that starting February 1st, he'd impose a 10% tariff on 8 European countries that sent troops. He threatened to raise it to 25% on June 1st if the resistance continues. Our first question: is military intervention actually possible? When it comes to Greenland, Trump is completely wrong. Because what was Trump's main argument? If we don't move in, China might get there before us. We can't fall behind. Plus, Chinese and Russian ships are already operating there. But Soren Anderson from Greenland Command stated that during Trump's 2.5 years in office, they never encountered any Chinese or Russian warships in Greenland waters, despite Trump's claims. Trump says the U.S. Golden Dome missile defense system is indispensable. Greenland is critical for that. There's also access to natural resources there. In domestic politics, he's selling the idea of make America great again, restore America, bring it back to greatness. If America chooses the military option, this would be a first in the alliance. But looking at everything, it's clear that military intervention isn't the first choice. Trump is so unpredictable that if one day he does send troops and planes start circling overhead, we shouldn't be too surprised. So why has NATO been so silent? Actually, it hasn't. Up to now, there have been reactions from Europe, and they've physically shown opposition to America by sending troops. The main thing tying Greenland's hands is that both countries belong to the same organization. A radical move here could result in NATO's complete dissolution. In such a situation, if there's any chance this is a bluff, and we talked about Trump's unpredictability, this radical step could backfire. Does NATO have a concrete plan? These issues were discussed in the North Atlantic Council. Proposals were made to launch a new mission in the region, deploy more equipment, or organize exercises. You might be saying, "Come on, man, America's messing around with tariffs over there. What are you guys even doing?" And you'd be right. But like I said, Europe doesn't want to act radically right now. As you can understand, there's some mind reading going on here. Now, according to the Washington Treaty, an attack on one ally is considered an attack on all allies. However, this principle doesn't envision an armed conflict between allies. Article 5, which regulates collective defense, doesn't provide guidance for an attack scenario coming from within. So when the threat comes from outside, the rules are clear. But when it comes from inside, NATO is somewhat unprepared. If Trump is really serious, as Italian Prime Minister Meloni said, this won't benefit anyone, not even the U.S., because the European Union could unite against the U.S. Now let's talk about that. Article 42.7 of the EU's Lisbon Treaty tells us this: if a member state is subjected to an armed attack, other members have an obligation to provide aid and assistance. To this day, only France activated this article after the 2015 terrorist attacks. In the event of a possible American attack on Greenland, Denmark has the same right. However, 42.7 doesn't mean automatic military intervention. How the process unfolds depends on Denmark's request, and whether unanimity can be achieved on the matter. Looking at the current situation, the likelihood of the European Union uniting on this issue is actually quite high. Because losing Greenland and the EU uniting on this means opening the door for America or another major power, this could be Russia, could be China, to make territorial claims tomorrow. For now, one thing is very clear. Trump is speaking much more openly than before. During his first term in 2019, he made similar statements to now. He expressed his desire to own Greenland and was told it wasn't for sale. But could the U.S. make a military move? Should we send more troops? These kinds of questions weren't being asked in NATO. So, the tariffs we mentioned at the beginning of the video, can they actually work? Truth is, he's a leader who's tried to use blanket trade penalties to make his rivals submit. He even got countries like Brazil and India to back down. Some countries on the continent accepted Trump's 15% tariff last year to maintain economic and security relations with America. In Europe, even though Trump is there, resistance to his policies is growing. More importantly, Trump's real goal isn't "let me impose tariffs so Europe will hand over Greenland." This is a tool for negotiation. The 10% tariff, as you can see, is quite symbolic. This certainly isn't an issue that will make Europe back down, because there's much more at stake here than trade. This is a matter of sovereignty. At this point, Trump is both buying time and creating costs. After all, tariffs don't directly hit governments. They hit companies first. When major corporations are affected, they pressure governments, and that strengthens Trump's hand. So tariffs aren't being used as a final tool. They're being used as an opening move. Today, Greenland stands at the center of a geopolitical chess game that could reshape the entire Atlantic Alliance. The glaciers may be thousands of years old, but this crisis is just beginning. But wait, what exactly are we fighting over here? Let's actually take a look at Greenland itself. Beyond the politics, beyond the treaties, what makes this frozen island worth all this trouble? Come with me. Let's explore Greenland from a different angle. Greenland. Kalalit Nunaat in the native language. The world's largest island. 2.1 million square kilometers. That's roughly the size of Mexico, or 3 times the size of Texas. Yet 80% of it is covered in ice, some places up to 3 kilometers thick. If you melted all of Greenland's ice, global sea levels would rise by over 7 meters. That's enough to submerge Miami, New York, London, and Amsterdam. But here's what most people don't know. Beneath this ancient ice sheet lies one of the planet's most valuable treasure troves. We're talking about rare earth elements, the building blocks of modern civilization. Neodymium for the magnets in electric car motors and wind turbines. Praseodymium for aircraft engines. Dysprosium for the hard drives storing all your data. Terbium for those brilliant screens you're watching this on right now. These aren't luxury items. These are the raw materials of the 21st century economy. And here's the kicker. China currently controls about 70% of global rare earth production. They've weaponized this monopoly before, cutting off exports to Japan during a territorial dispute in 2010. The entire global supply chain froze. Car factories shut down. Tech companies panicked. Greenland could break that monopoly. Geological surveys suggest the island holds some of the world's largest untapped deposits of these critical minerals. We're talking potentially trillions of dollars in value. But it's not just what's under the ice. It's what's happening to the ice itself. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. In some parts, it's warming 4 times faster. Greenland lost 532 billion tons of ice in 2019 alone. As this ice retreats, it's not just revealing mineral deposits. It's opening entirely new shipping routes. The Northwest Passage, blocked by ice for most of human history, is becoming navigable. Ships can now cut 40% off the journey between Europe and Asia by going through the Arctic instead of the Suez or Panama canals. That's weeks of travel time, millions in fuel costs saved. Whoever controls Greenland controls access to these routes. They control the checkpoints of 21st century global trade. Now, let's talk strategy. Pull up a map. Look at Greenland's position. It sits right between North America and Europe, like a massive aircraft carrier that never moves. During World War II, the U.S. realized this and established a presence there. Then came the Cold War. In 1951, the Thule Air Base was built in northwest Greenland, just 1,500 kilometers from the North Pole. This wasn't just any base. Thule became the eyes and ears of America's early warning system against Soviet missiles. Those radars are still operating today, now watching for Russian and Chinese activity in the Arctic. The base is also critical for America's missile defense system, the one Trump keeps mentioning. Interceptor missiles stationed in Alaska and California need tracking data from somewhere. Greenland provides that coverage for the northern approach. Without it, there's a massive blind spot in America's defense umbrella. But here's what makes this even more interesting. Russia has been aggressively expanding its Arctic presence. They've reopened Soviet-era military bases, built new ones, deployed nuclear-capable bombers to the region. Just last year, they conducted their largest Arctic military exercises since the Cold War. 50,000 troops. China, despite being nowhere near the Arctic, declared itself a near-Arctic state in 2018. They're investing billions in Arctic research, infrastructure, and icebreaker ships. In fact, China now has more icebreakers than the United States. Why? Because they see what's coming. As the ice melts, the Arctic becomes the new Mediterranean, a crucial crossroads of global commerce and military power. And Greenland is the island in the middle of it all. Now let's talk about the people who actually live there. About 56,000 people call Greenland home. Roughly 89% are Greenlandic Inuit, descended from the Thule people who migrated there around 1300 AD. The capital, Nuuk, has just 19,000 people. There are no roads connecting towns. You travel by boat, helicopter, or plane. The entire island has less population than a single neighborhood in Brooklyn. Life there is tough. Suicide rates are among the highest in the world. Alcoholism is a massive problem. The legacy of Danish colonization still stings. For decades, Denmark tried to erase Greenlandic culture, language, and identity. Kids were taken from their families and forced into Danish schools. It wasn't until 2009 that Greenland gained self-government, though Denmark still controls foreign affairs and defense. But here's the thing. Greenlanders don't want to be American either. A recent poll showed 68% oppose any sale or transfer to the United States. They've spent generations fighting for independence from Denmark. Why would they trade one colonial master for another? The premier of Greenland, Mute Egede, has been crystal clear. We are not for sale. We are Greenlanders. We don't want to be Danes, and we don't want to be Americans. Yet they're caught in an impossible position. Greenland's economy is heavily dependent on Danish subsidies, about $600 million per year, roughly half the government budget. Fishing is the main industry, but it's not enough to sustain independence. Those rare earth minerals could change everything. True economic independence, a sovereign nation with control over its own destiny. But extracting those minerals requires massive investment, billions of dollars. Money Greenland doesn't have. Enter the superpowers. The US offers development deals. China offers infrastructure investments. Russia watches from across the Arctic, each one promising prosperity, each one wanting strategic control. Greenland's leaders are trying to play a careful game. Take the investment without surrendering sovereignty. But that's a tightrope walk, and the fall is steep. Here's what's really at stake. This isn't just about one island. It's about the new world order being written in melting ice. Climate change isn't just an environmental crisis. It's a geopolitical earthquake. The Arctic ice has acted as a lock on enormous wealth and strategic territory for all of human history. That lock is opening. What happens when it's gone? Who claims the resources? Who controls the shipping lanes? Who militarizes the region? These questions don't have peaceful answers yet. And Greenland, this massive, mostly empty frozen island, is ground zero for all of it. The 56,000 people living there never asked for this. They just want to fish, maintain their culture, and maybe one day be truly independent. Instead, they're watching the world's most powerful nations circle like sharks. So now you understand. This isn't about Trump being impulsive or NATO overreacting. This is about the future of global power being redrawn in ice and minerals. A frozen island with fewer people than a mid-sized American suburb is causing the biggest crisis in NATO's history, because everyone knows what's coming. The ice is melting. The resources are there. The strategic position is irreplaceable, and time is running out to secure it. The glaciers may be thousands of years old, but this crisis is just beginning. And how we handle it, how we balance power, sovereignty, and the rights of indigenous peoples will define the next century of geopolitics. Thanks for watching, folks. This is a story that's still unfolding, and I'll be here to break it down as it develops. Stay informed, stay critical, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. The Arctic is heating up in more ways than one, and we're just getting started.